Just as an overview of where we are in NSAI, I've just recently joined NSAI, so we're a new inspection and certification team. It's set up under the Housing for All initiative, and we've been asked to enhance the agreement process that's currently enshrined in the Building Regulations Technical Guidance Document Part D. So I just want to take you through the work that we've been doing over the last couple of months. We're under a separate certification team in NSAI Ireland, and I just want to explain a little bit about NSAI Ireland because we have a dual role within the built environment sector, and that's not fully always understood here. So we have to have impartiality. We can't have conflicts of interest between both standards and certification. So I cannot influence, as a certifier, I cannot influence standards. Only industry, academia, manufacturers, yourselves in the public realm can affect standards and change standards, and that's for the benefit of society. As a certifier, we certify or referee against those standards, and that's something that has to be a clear distinction. The other thing that needs to be borne in mind is we've no powers of authority under the building regulations, as would a building control officer or a local authority. We can suspend, revoke, or withdraw a certificate that's been issued to an off-site manufacturer or modern methods of construction. But we also have a legal metrology team, and they look after things like petrol pumps, taxi meters, automotive, NCT centres, and we have a national laboratory that looks after calibrations of equipment and materials. So I just want to be very clear, there's a clear distinction between certification standards. And what we do is we take direction from a European perspective and also from SEN and the ISO committees. And then we bring that down to national legislation, and that's how we develop a standard. And depending on which sector that we need to support, so we're doing a lot of work around green hydrogen, artificial intelligence, but predominantly we're here for the built environment. But anyone can sit on a technical committee, and we have a technical committee, TC 150, that looks after prefabricated buildings, and we recommend anyone to join that committee. We're mirroring, there's an ISO committee that's been led by China for prefabricated buildings. Ireland is an observatory member at the moment, and we are also we've been invited to be a participatory member because of the work that we've been doing and the positive work that government has been promoting around modern methods of construction. So I did a presentation there to the chair, Bu Ying, and they were very impressed with what Ireland is doing. And even Mark Farmer has said Ireland has caught up very quickly with the UK, where this modern methods of construction is emanating from. Just to give you a quick little overview, and everyone's familiar very much with the categories of MMC. So it has different terminologies, different names: modular construction, off-site manufacturing, off-site assembly, prefabrication, but it's all under the umbrella term of modern methods of construction. So people use the word interchangeably, but it all means the same thing. Predominantly, NSAI Ireland would have been very much in the green quadrant. We would have been looking after products, one or two building systems, and we had a built environment team. Due to the increased demand for agreement certification, we've now split that into our sustainability and built environment team and our MMC certification team. The reason for that is we're getting a lot more increase around hempcrete, renewables, solar panels, cellulose, different low carbon materials, so they need to be also certified. People want to use the likes of crushed glass for foundations. So we want to repurpose and recycle that, and that's where we're focused on. We don't have many additive manufacturing in the grey quadrant. There's only one company here in Ireland that provides 3D additive manufacturing for concrete printing. And we also don't focus too much on the mechanical electrical side, which is category number 5. And the reason for that is because they have their own CE marking under various European directives. So low voltage directive, machinery directive, pressure equipment directive, ATEX directive. They operate in predominantly the pharmaceutical and life science and data center sectors. But what also we find is there's also bathroom pods will be in category number 5. So at the moment, our team is certifying for categories 1, 2, and 3, and our SB&E team are focused on category number 6, which is around the sustainable materials and that direction where the industry is going on that side. We aren't so much looking at the processes, but BIM comes into category 7. So that's how we're looking at focused on the team at the moment. Just to look at the drivers and the policy behind it and how we're set up. As I said, the government have been very proactive in this space, and we're under the roadmap, so there's a huge amount of policy documents that are available. But what we're finding more and more is it's being specified in e-tenders. So we've had conversations where clients have come back to us and said, we need agreement certification because it's now a requirement on the tender. The Department of Education we've met with as well have 16 off-site manufacturers in their capital works framework, and we've met with them, and there's a new framework coming out in 2025, and they want all their members who are supplied on that framework to be agreement certified as well. And no doubt, probably the Department of Health will want to look at it as well. So it's becoming a requirement to be able to bid and under the frameworks. And it is mentioned in the Capital Works PF2 document that agreement is recommended. What McKinsey said back in 2019 and 2020, when there's a labour shortage and a housing crisis, modern medicine construction is ripe for adoption. And this is what's happened. It's a global phenomenon that's happening. It's not just only in Ireland, it's in San Francisco, Canada, New Zealand, Portugal, Luxembourg. So what we need to do is, we also have new market entrants coming in. So based on the signalling from the government that there's investment there under Housing for All, we're starting to get a lot of international inquiries, and I'll show you what's happening there. And then, as Aidan pointed out, there's a lot of work going on in the background, refining these policies and driving these actions. These are the documents there. Sorry, I'll just skip past there. These are the documents that enshrine what we're doing. And under Part D of the building regulations, that's where agreement certification is referenced. It's the smallest of all the building regulations. It's only 19 pages long, but that's where our assurance scheme is there for certification. These are all the publications, and our guide is in the middle there, which is freely available on the website. It's only 20 pages to read and a series of appendices, but what we find is some organisations are not preparing themselves if they want to get certified. In terms of the drivers under Housing for All and the roadmap, we have 4 actions that have been allocated to ourselves, and it's to strengthen the agreement process, and we have a couple of new service offerings around that and an increase in the inspection regime. We're also looking at benchmarking ourselves internationally against other schemes, and we have a report coming out at the end of this month, and it's identified 16 different jurisdictions of where agreement certification has been involved. Further on from that, as I said, this is the critical point here. It's under Part D of the building regulations, but it's not the only sole route to certification. So that's what needs to be borne in mind. A manufacturer or a designer can get a CE marking under the existing construction product regulations, and that's currently out for public consultation at the moment at European level. But we're waiting for direction from Europe on that. Once that's been signed off by all the member states, that will potentially have an impact. They're talking about increasing digitalisation within those CE marking certificates and standardisation. So again, supporting that direction from Europe and under the EU Green Deal. There is another route as well, which is European Technical Assessment route, which is managed by IOTA in Brussels. And where there is no standard, you can have your product certified, but it takes typically 9 months to a year. To go down the construction product route would take you a year as well, because you need a notified body. NSAI are a notified body. We're not the only notified body here in Ireland. You cannot use UK notified bodies for CE marking because post-Brexit, UCAS is no longer recognised in the EU 27 jurisdictions. So this has caused a couple of issues and problems. We've set up a UK team over there to support Irish companies, because the reverse of that is UK CA mark, UCAS. What we also have is, under an Irish standard, and as Aidan said, IS 440, there is a certification scheme for timber frame construction. So again, they need to be certified, and they also need to be audited twice a year. But excluding all that, we have the Irish agreement certification process as an alternative. So it's where there is no national standard available, where it's an innovative product, or there's no harmonised standard. That's what agreement is, to help close the gap. And that's what we're trying to do. We're very much focused on proper materials. It's up to the specifier and the manufacturer to design for its intended use. So they need to take in the factors of where they're building these houses. Is it in the west of Ireland with wind-driven rain, or is it going to be increased climatic conditions? They need to design their product, but they also must have robust quality control measures around those manufacturing processes. And that's what we're here to assess and verify. Under the agreement certification, we will look at both the building regulations, technical guidance documents, Part A to M, and there is Part C is due out for a change shortly, and there's been a few changes to Part M at the start of this year, and Part B has closed for public consultation there back in June, so there's expected changes to support modern medicine construction around that, but we'll wait to see what the outcome of that is. We also look at laboratory test results, structural calculations, designs, and we're also looking at both the on-site methods, because just because you manufacture off-site doesn't mean you don't have to comply with the building regulations. It complies both off-site and on-site, and people just suddenly don't understand that. And also, you may not see what's happening in the factory over the 12 to 20 weeks while the modules or the panelised systems are being fabricated. We also insist on a factory production control process, so they have to have robust systems, competency around the installers. And where we find a little bit of difficulty is the off-site manufacturers are very good at making the modules, but what the difficulty is the assembly on site. The on-site teams who are used to traditional construction may not be familiar with the methods of assembly or protecting from the weather or moisture or damage. So how is that process controlled? There has been issues over in the UK in relation to moisture and poor foundations, and in some cases the modules have had to be disassembled over a 6-month period while they repair and rectify. So nobody wants to be down this route, and that's why we want to make sure it's robust and in place. In terms of our current clients, so if you go to the NSAI Agreement certification, you can search by any Agreement cert for both products and systems. We have 16 clients at the moment. They have 22 certificates, so some have more than one. We have a few that are of our existing clients that are back in for renewals. So the likes of integrated concrete formwork, they would make the foam blocks and submit them out to site. They want to pour the concrete in a factory and send it as a 2D panelised cured concrete blocks with the windows and doors and the framework on it. We've also had cases where light gauge steel companies have a 2D panelised system and they now want to go to a full 3D volumetric system. The only company that has a full 3D volumetric certified system here in Ireland is Modern Homes Ireland, MHI, but we have 4 applications currently in place at the moment. We've had a huge amount of inquiries over the last couple of months in relation to this and getting Agreement certification, and we're starting to get a lot of international traction around that. So we're working with these clients. We're measuring and keeping dashboard metrics of our certification scheme, and we're also going to let you know where the stages of these off-site manufacturers are in the process. Not many people know that there's 160 different off-site manufacturers here in Ireland. Indigenous companies with a factory, with Irish employed people here. So just bear that in mind. People, it's not overseas, it's not companies in the UK making a module and shipping it here to Ireland and doing the final finishes. But predominantly they're very much in the multinational sector where there's high value return, data centres, life sciences, as I said earlier. We only have 16 of the 160 certified. And what we want to do is grow that to get about 40 companies certified, which will then support the policies that our government are doing. We've had a conversation with the Department of Education. We're looking at targeting 5 next year with a view that they want all 16 on the framework to be certified. And the likes of the HSE are doing a 90-bed extension down at University of Limerick, and then there's also an extension using modular on the Waterford Emergency Department. So we definitely see a growth in this space. The difficulty for us is the European entrants and the overseas entrants are not familiar with Irish building regulations. The difficulty is the building regulations across Europe is not the same. So we have higher standards here. We've been increasing the regulations in terms of thermal conductivity, Part L. We've been also looking for certain requirements, and you have the post-Brexit impacts as well related to that. And they're not very familiar with that. So they have a little bit of a lighter touch approach. And in some of the cases, we've had a European technical assessment from 2 European off-site manufacturers. However, it says on the ETA, you must ensure you comply with national legislation. And what I mean by that is they might wire the cables over in Poland, but not realise they have to comply with an Irish standard here for IS 10101 for our cabling. So that's presenting us a little bit of challenges, but we can't be a consultancy and advisory service. And this is where the difficulty is. But we want to make sure we support them in that process and how we get through that. So in terms of just the steps on that, we're trying to simplify this process. We've also enhanced it by giving 4 services now. So we have a pre-approval process. And what we're saying to off-site manufacturers, if you're a brand new entrant here in the market, we'll support you, but we'll assess you on a fair, transparent scoring system, because we don't want to bring you into the process and you're struggling in there, paying a lot of money, and you don't get through the process after 2 years and you're just getting frustrated. So what we said is, if you still feel you're confident enough that you've done your due diligence, a lot of preparation, we'll assess you. And as part of that, if the audit is done within the first 12 to 15 months, we'll give that free of charge as part of the agreement process. It is a 5-year certificate, it's valid for 5 years from the date of publication, but there is an annual audit over that 5-year period that you must participate in. If you're a timber frame, you must get 2 audits a year as a minimum. We're also doing a series of unannounced audits as well as planned audits. So we will be signalling to the market that we'll be going out for that. To help support the gap and the knowledge that was around the BCAR process, we're also going to provide an ancillary certification process. We cannot act as the assigned certifier design certifier because there can only be one person in that role under the current SI9 legislation. But what we'll do is, on an 80-20 Pareto analysis approach, we'll look at how the modules being formed, we'll push this into the inspection notification framework, and we'll provide those inspections, and we'll give those reports to the assigned certifier, design certifier, to underwrite that. And we're also in support of the Office of Government Procurement BIM mandate. We're going to provide ISO 19650 certification. So we've 33 clients in at the moment that are looking for that accreditation. So what we're trying to do is a series of infographics that will help make it easier for people to follow through the process. But what we find is they don't do a detailed gap analysis of their system. It's their system, it's their process, it's their design, it's their implementation. It's novel. We understand that. but you need to read the guide, you need to see what's expected of you, and then present that and provide that. So we can be there to help, but we can't be very prescriptive exactly why you're short. A lot of people ask us, how many tests do we need to do? What type of tests should I do? Where will I go to test the body? That is not our decision. It's for professional bodies to support you in that space. All we can say is you're short of meeting the requirements, and therefore you need to go back and do possibly further testing engagement. But we are engaging with them, and it is quite an expensive process to tie into it. We'll carry out initial assessment. We'll develop a technical assessment specification against the various different requirements. We may look for additional supporting documentation or calculations or other prima facie evidence that demonstrates compliance of your system. And we will check them against reference standards or documents, and we'll support that. And then we'll take a visit to the factory to make sure they're compliant. Typical things we're looking at is durability, the structure. Fire is a massive behaviour. Fire is very critical here in Ireland. Thermal performance, interstitial condensation, even down to the cladding and weathering. So you've got to look at these as building elements. It's a complex building system. And then even to the point, are they outsourcing the mechanical and electrical services? Is that by others? Who's doing the drainage? Who's doing the connections? So it's a lot of conversations. And then if these modules go over a certain height, who's looking after the lightning protection on these modules? So sometimes they're 2-story, but then somebody pushes it on to 3, 4, and 5-story. So who's doing that? And if the off-site manufacturer is only supplying the modules, is the main contractor then doing that, or is that by a separate team? So these are the conversations that need to be taken into account. In terms of the assessment tests that we would look for, as some examples, there's an EN standard, and these are in Technical Guidance Document Part B, EN 1365 for floor and walls testing, but we also have the likes of low-bearing elements, and then we've also external cladding testing. There is a little bit of difficulty around renders and slit brick that are being required on certain buildings. That's causing a bit of concern around the durability of it because it's a critical element to the building. And critical elements in the documents require 60 years because of the structure. It has an impact to cause damage to the building if moisture or any issues of fire was to penetrate into the building. So this is something that manufacturers need to bear in mind, but some of the solutions, the manufacturers can only provide a 30-year warranty, and in some cases it'll push 40 years. So now we have a little bit of a gap here, and this is where we need extra evidence to prevent this. We're also looking at acoustics. So as I said, one of the ETA certificates that I received from Poland, it actually said no requirements for acoustics, non-product declared. Unfortunately, they had to comply with Part E of the building regulations here, so they've now have to go back and do additional testing here in Ireland or in Europe to comply with it. Also, Part L requirements have increased, and that also needs to be complied with, and the thermal and U values. So these, again, we're looking for calculations from accredited deep assessors that can do these calculations. So there's not many of them on that certification scheme either. And we're also looking for weather tightness testing. There is a facility down in Gorey, and I know Construct Innovate are gathering all the test facilities here in Ireland. The one thing to bear in mind is there is only one fire testing laboratory here in Ireland. It's up in Effectus in the University of Jordanstown. And the difficulty then is you can use a UK laboratory for testing as long as it's to an EN standard or a British standard that's existing here. Their laboratory isn't accredited under an EU scheme, but they cannot certify the product under construction product regulations. They cannot CE mark a product for you. They can carry out the fire testing, and we will accept testing from the UK. Otherwise, you're sending a module or a panelised system over to mainland Europe, and that's going to be problematic. There's also a delay in booking in these tests, and that's what causes a lot of issues out at site. We also want to make sure that there's no contamination in the raw material. How do we know that the thickness of, say, the light gauge steel is being maintained? How do you know if they're using the beads, the polymer beads for an integrated concrete formwork that haven't been used recycled plastic? So again, we're looking at material traceability, material certificates. We're looking at the control of that, even the competencies and even the preventative maintenance around these machines and equipment. So a lot of these outside manufacturers are getting a lot of funding, especially as new entrants, but they don't realise they have to have controls around the process. And even just how it's brought to site, how it's assembled, we're having a lot of difficulty around that. Some of the modules are left on site for a couple of days, the rain gets into them, they're moved around by the main contractor, they get damaged, broken. So some of the mature off-site manufacturers are now controlling that own process themselves. They're sending their own assembly to the site because they just feel it's so much easier than having to have risks and increased issues around insurance or vesting certs. And a lot of people have asked me the timeline around this process. So to be helpful in this process, we're developing a series of infographics, and what we're trying to do is get through the process. At the moment, it's taking about 15 to 21 months to get through an agreement certificate. That's quite a long time because of the series of technical documentation that we're expecting. However, we'd love to get it down to 6 months. EOTA is quoting on their website 9 to 12 months as a guide. CE marking would take over a year with a notified body, and we're looking to get that down to about 9 to 15 months. But it all depends on the inputs that come back from the designers, specifiers and offsite manufacturers. If they engage with us, and no doubt if you get the right inputs, we can get better outputs for you. But again, they get held up in the process because they need additional testing, they need to book into a laboratory. But we're also happy to take stage payments, and in some cases we have companies that we decide they'll pay over 5 or 10 payment periods, but what happens is they only pay the first 2 or 3. We get cases where people say, I need an agreement cert, I need to get on the process. We say, no problems, we get them in, they pay the application fee, we sign the contract, but then they don't come back. And I'm chasing one guy in England, he's paid the full fee, I've contacted him 3 times in the last 3 months, no answer, rung the office, they said they'll get back to me, and there's no word. But I know it'll happen. It'll suddenly be urgent, he's on a job, and a signed certifier, building control officer will say, where's your agreement cert? And he'll be on to me saying, can I accelerate it? I'm suddenly back in now, can I get it certified? So we're here to support the manufacturers, and we're here to engage them. So read the guides is what we're saying, look at the gaps, see what's needed, and become prepared into this process, because it is quite a detailed technical process. And I know, speaking to the industry, they want a robust scheme, so we're basing it very much on the Board BIA scheme, Board BIA mark, no different to your passport applications, no different to your NCT. It needs to be a fair, transparent and robust system that will give confidence and assurance to the market. But the off-site manufacturers want this as well, because this becomes, not that it's a barrier to entry, but it maintains standards. Nobody wants to have a defective modular building in the future, and we can't afford to have that, so it'll give issues down the line. So that's my slide there. Thank you very much, Alan.
Excellent. Good.